This Friday, from Disney, the musical movie event of the year arrives in theaters.
My name is Snow White.
Flawless.
Exquisite.
Get tickets now.
Waiting on a wind.
Snow White will have you on your feet
I think that's a wonderful idea.
and cheering for more.
I was thinking the same thing.
Experience the magical story.
Magic mirror on the wall. Who's the fairest one of all?
Snow White.
Disney's Snow White. Only in theaters Friday. Rated PG. Parental guidance suggested. Tickets on sale now.
Today at T-Mobile, I'm joined by a special co-anchor.
What up, everybody? It's your boy, Big Snoop Deal Double G.
Snoop, where can people go to find great deals?
Head to T-Mobile.com and get 4 iPhone 16s with Apple Intelligence on us, plus 4 lines for $25.
That's quite a deal, Snoop. And when you switch to T-Mobile, you can save versus the other big guys' comparable plans plus streaming.
Respect. When we up out of here.
See how you can save on wireless and streaming versus the other big guys at T-Mobile.com/switch. Apple Intelligence requires iOS 18.1 or later.
This episode is brought to you by Prime Video. In the small town of Holland, Michigan, nothing is ever what it seems. Behind the tulip festivals and pretty houses lay dark secrets that threaten to tear a marriage apart. Nicole Kidman stars in this darkly twisted thriller about a wife and mother whose quest to uncover her husband's secrets may get her more than she bargained for. Holland, streaming on Prime Video March 27th.
Are your ulcerative colitis symptoms proving difficult to manage? Tremfya guselkumab can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. At 1 year, many patients taking Tremfya achieved clinical remission, and some patients also achieved endoscopic remission. Individual results may vary. Tremfya is a prescription medicine used to treat adults with moderately to severely active ulcerative colitis. Serious allergic reactions and increased risk of infections may occur. Before treatment, your doctor should check you for infections and TB. Tell your doctor if you have an infection, flu-like symptoms, or if you need a vaccine. Ask your doctor if Tremfya can help you manage the cycle of UC symptoms. Call 1-800-526-7736 to learn more or visit tremfyaradio.com.
This episode is brought to you by Progressive Commercial Insurance. Business owners, meet Progressive Insurance. They make it easy to get discounts on commercial auto insurance and find coverages to grow with your business. Quote in as little as 6 minutes at progressivecommercial.com. Progressive Casualty Insurance Company. Coverage provided and serviced by affiliated and third-party insurers. Discounts and coverage selections not available in all states or situations.
Hey there, Duke fans. Welcome to episode number 706 of the Duke Basketball Roundup. And it's Sunday, March 16th, 2025, Selection Sunday. But it is a happy one because at least for this first part, we get to celebrate the fact that the Duke men's basketball team joined the women as ACC Tournament Champions. It is the first time since 2010-2011 that both teams have won the ACC Tournament. I am Donald Wine. I am your host for this episode as we get to regale on the fact that our team is champions. I got Jason Evans with me. He is still in his hotel room in Charlotte, mainly because I had to watch F1 and cover soccer and F1 all night. And so I am keeping him hostage in his hotel room until I could wake up and actually prepare for this episode. Hi, Jason.
Hey, Lake, it is worth noting that I did not get out of that stadium. The post-game festivities, which I was like right there for. I sent you some pictures. I was like right in the middle of all of it. The post-game festivities, the locker room, the post-game press conferences, just kind of winding down and everything. I didn't get back to my hotel room till like almost 1 a.m. I did some research to be prepped for this episode because, folks, in case you don't know, we don't just come on here and wing it. There's a good deal of preparation that comes into this. I got to sleep around 2:30 or so. I am incredibly beat. I have a 3.5-hour drive ahead of me to get back to Atlanta. But I am all in on celebrating this victory. Huge, unbelievable that Duke could do this without 2 of their 6 best players. It's just incredible.
The 23rd ACC tournament title for Duke, the second for John Shire in just 3 years of coaching. As I mentioned, the first time since 2010-2011 that both the men and women win the ACC tournament titles. First time since 2005-2006 that Duke claimed the outright ACC regular season title, and also the ACC tournament title. And Jason, I think the most important milestone that we reach, Duke moves to 26-0 when Spencer Hubbard plays. I think that's important. When Spencer Hubbard checks in, that means start lighting the candles, baby, because it is over. Okay, Jason. Before we get into some of the
if I can, I wanted to so you were mentioning some of those superlatives, and I wanted to specifically just mention Jon Scheyer, because you said 2 titles in 3 years for him. Brendan Marks has an article in The Athletic this morning. I was sitting very close to Brendan, all weekend, chatted with him a good bit. He notes that the last 3 coaches to win 2 ACC titles in 3 years, and see if you know these guys. It's sort of obscure. It's Roy Williams, it's Mike Krzyzewski, and Dean Smith. Those are the other 3 guys.
I've never heard of 2 of them. One of those guys, Coach, Mike Krzyzewski, he turned out to be a good guy. I don't know about the other 2.
Yeah, so now the ranks of people to win 2 titles in 3 years over the past 50 years or something. There are people who did it back in the 40s and 50s or something like that. The ranks of people to do it in modern times are 3 Hall of Famers and Jon Scheyer. Donald, I'm going to go ahead and say, crazy prediction. It's way, way early. Jon Scheyer will someday be in the Coaching Hall of Fame. What he has done is absolutely incredible. And to do it in his first 3 seasons, it's impossible to say that anyone expected this from him, other than maybe Coach K and Chris Carrawell, who are the 2 people who were like, Jon Scheyer is the next coach of Duke basketball. We don't want to hear any other discussion. Just amazing on his part.
Well, also considering the fact that we've seen, the coaching carousel very much open up in the last few days, including a couple people who replaced legends at their school getting the axe.
Villanova,
right?
Yep.
Yeah, there's a lot of those lately, and the fact that we have a guy that is replacing the legend and has only set the record for most wins in ACC history in the first 3 seasons, a couple of ACC titles.
Is that all?
And now, hopefully not. Hopefully we got more to come, especially this season. I know you agree with that. I think I want to point this out as we kind of get into some of the general observations, Jason. This game, obviously, was the last game of the ACC season. The first game was also against Louisville. And Dave Jordan pointed this out, that in both games, we had a 4 or 5 point deficit at half against Louisville, and we ended up winning by exactly 11 points. And first off, Jason, give me the vibes before the game, during the game, in the arena. I was watching the first half in the press box. I was covering soccer. I was covering 2 soccer games and this game at the same time. Yay me. But also then in the second half, I was driving, so I was able to listen to some of it before I got to watch the rest of the game. And the vibe felt like it was a very partisan Duke crowd, but there were times, especially, and it felt like there was just a lot of ACC fans there rooting for a great game. And in the first half, it was a back and forth game.
Yeah, for sure. I will credit. First of all, I should note that there were probably 10 times as many Duke fans as Louisville fans. You could look out
that's expected.
In the crowd.
That's expected, right? We're in Charlotte, so.
Yeah, you could look out in the crowd and you just saw a lot of blue and not very much red. There were moments, though, especially in that first half, where the Louisville fans, now part of it was they had a section that I was fairly close to that you could really hear. I mean, those folks were doing a nice job of rallying on their team, but it was nothing like when Duke was making a run or Duke made a big play. The place was just much louder. Speaking of the crowd, though, I wanted to note something. There's no coach anywhere in the country who cheers like Chris Carrawell does. Yeah. The moment Duke would make a big play, rather than looking at his bench, rather than looking at the court and the players, Sewell turns around every single time. And by the way, I know this because I was seated almost directly behind him. Turns and the Duke section was right behind me. The Shires, all the players' parents, all those kind of folks, Gerald Henderson. Sewell, on every big play, his instinct is turn around, look at that crowd with all the familiar faces and go, yeah! I mean, no one bellows and gets the crowd into it like Coach Sewell. It's almost like he thinks that's part of his job is to be cheerleader to the Duke fans. I was there for every second of it. It was amazing.
They actually put this Duke men's basketball, which again is very much online. They put this out a couple weeks ago where Cooper did something incredible. It doesn't matter what it was, right? But he turned to the crowd immediately. He turned to the section behind the bench and camera and was like, he's like that. Like that man is different. And was just yelling that throughout the timeout. Like everyone's like high-fiving and gathering the huddle. He's still talking to people behind the bench. What's this other team going to do? Call timeout? I don't care. This man is different right here. It was just hyping his guys up, which is great. Also, Jason, I want to note you were on press row, which I know makes it you and I very difficult to celebrate some of these moments. But you know how I have the fix for you, Jason. Be Carlos Boozer. Because Carlos Boozer was very much partial, and he was covering the game for ACC Network and ESPN. He was over there
some of the
going
footage.
ham.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah, it's funny. So just be him next time.
Yeah, Carlos can get away with it. My stature is not that of Carlos Boozer.
You are not 6'9". That's correct. Yeah.
No. So yeah, I wasn't going to do that. I tried to remain calm. I think I did a pretty good job of it. There are a couple things I wanted to note from being in the post-game press conferences and in the locker room and stuff like that. And just a second, I'm going to play some of the sound I got talking to a few of the players after the game. First of all, Jon Scheyer had just a great post-game press conference. If you haven't had a chance, folks, I'm sure you can find it online. There's a wonderful moment where he talks about, and we've heard about this a little bit regarding this Duke team, the Japanese concept, the sort of the business concept of Kaizen, which is a concept of continuous improvement. And Scheyer talked about and said it's not about a specific result. It's not about wins. It's not about something that you try to achieve. It's preaching that you just try to get a little bit better every single day. There's no end point. There's no like, oh, we've got there. It's about getting a little bit better every single day. Ask yourself every single day, what did I do to get better? And he said, and at the end, if you do that, you're probably going to get the result that you were looking for anyway, but it's not about achieving that result. And he also was asked a bit about Cooper Flagg and how Cooper had overshadowed Kon Knueppel and Kamen Malawach all season. And Scheyer said, look, I've seen these two guys, Kon and Kamen. I've seen them in practice every day. I knew what they were capable of when Cooper Flagg went down. Scheyer was like, I wasn't at all surprised. And both those guys, Kon and Kamen, make the first team all-tournament team. They were both incredible in every single game. We'll talk more about it in a little bit. But Scheyer was like, he was asked, the nation hasn't really seen those guys. And Scheyer was like, I've seen them. He's like,
it sounds like a them problem, right? Like we've watched them all year. And again, it goes to show like Cooper Flagg being out was the entire story of this tournament. But if you were watching this team and you turned in and watched Duke for the first time, you'd be like, yo, that Kon Knueppel guy? Who is this Cooper Flagg guy they keep talking about? Because this Kon Knueppel guy is really good. And oh yeah, that big guy, that big tree in the center, man, he can get around and he can play offense and defense. It's incredible how these guys have been able to step up in the absence of two major stars.
Yeah, and then the third person that I thought, Scheyer also talked about Proctor a good bit, but the one I wanted to specifically mention was he talked about Patrick Gongba. And he talked about how proud he was of Pat. And he said, Pat came to us last summer, and his feet and legs hurt all the time. And Scheyer shouted out the Duke coaching staff. He said, look, we knew we couldn't work with Pat. We knew Pat couldn't start really practicing and playing until he got healthy. And Scheyer said the Duke training staff, he said, Coach Will Stevens, the head trainer. Yeah, Coach Will. Yeah. Everybody around Duke knows Coach Will. He said, Pat and Coach Will became best friends. And Scheyer just said, those guys have done such a great job to help Pat get to the point where he's now playing pain-free. And then Scheyer talked a little bit about Pat and Kamen and how they have worked together, worked so hard to get each other better. And then he noted, he goes, if you go anywhere on campus at Duke and you see Pat, you'll see Kamen right there. Or if you see Kamen, you'll see Pat right there. The two of them are like inseparable, and they've dedicated themselves to working hard. And that takes me to the sound I got from players in the postgame. There's a huge scrum of media all over the place, and I prefer to try and get a little one-on-one time if I can. So I was able to speak to Mason Gillis, I was able to speak to Patrick Gongba, and I was able to speak to my man Sion James. And folks have a listen. Some of it is really great. We'll talk about it after it's done, but I think you get some good insight into each one of these guys in this sound. Have a listen.
Hey, Mason, I noticed the first half to the second half, the defensive intensity, you guys really stepped it up. Kind of reminds me sort of in reverse of the Carolina game. Was there anything you guys said at halftime? Anything you guys were thinking of that you were like, now's our moment, we got to do it now?
It was just we got to do everything we can do to win. We were down coming out of half, and they're a really good basketball team. And so we knew we had to respect them going into the game. But once we were in the situation that we were in, we realized that we had to dig even deeper, come together, fight even harder, and just do the little things, whether I was guarding your man, rebounding, hitting a shot, just doing your job.
And I noticed that you were specifically guarding Terrence Edwards a lot in that second half. He had a huge game against you guys, but you seemed to shut him down. Any hints of how that happened?
Just trying to play hard. Just trying to do my job, help my team get the win.
You're a guy who's won a lot of titles at Purdue. What are you telling the guys in the locker room about what it takes to be as successful, to cut down the nets, and what it takes to make it back and even further than you did last year?
We always talk about the desperation and details, and it's just the little things of the game. A lot of people overlook and think that a buzzer beater at the end of the game was what won the game for them, and it might have put the scoreboard ahead, but that's not really what won the game. There was probably an offensive rebound. There was probably a blown missed coverage, and so we just try to put all of our focus on the little details because they end up, changing the course of the game. And so whenever everybody on the court, the coaches, we all have each other's back, it's a lot easier to do our job.
Thanks, Mason. Okay, Pat. Early in the second half, you came in, and it felt like the game plan was, let's feed Big Pat in the middle, let him go one-on-one. I've watched a lot of Duke games this year. I don't think I've seen much of that. Talk to me about what that was like.
It was definitely fun. Just being able to go out there and just play. So play free and all that. So it was definitely a fun experience, and my teammates and coaches trusted me. So.
And it's been a tough season, I guess, in terms of knowing your playing time. One day it could be 2-3 minutes, and then next day it's 20 minutes, and you're playing a huge role. Talk about, I know as a freshman it's so difficult. Talk about, how your mental approach has been to the games.
I just try to treat everyone as the same, whether I'm playing 2 minutes or 20 minutes, like you said, and I just try to do everything that I would do if I was playing a lot. So yeah.
And you have to battle man in practice every day. That can't be fun. Talk about is there a little bit of a rivalry going on there or anything?
I wouldn't call it a rivalry, but we definitely compete every day in practice. We make each other better. So yeah.
Yeah, it's got to playing against a 7'2" guy like that. It's got to make you better. Yeah.
Yeah. Definitely the finishing at the basket. He when we first got here, he would block my shot sometimes. So it's definitely I would have to change the way I shoot, or give him a shot fake or something. So yeah.
And the last thing is, at halftime, you guys came out with much more intensity than you were playing much of the first half. Is there anything that Coach said to you all? Is there a John Shire inspired us in this kind of way story or something like that?
He just kind of said they're just out competing us, and then so in the second half we just wanted to change that, and I feel like we did.
All right, always my favorite interview. See you on, my man. By the way, check your phone. I sent you some great photos of you cutting down the nets. You'll enjoy them. Awesome. I had a good angle on it.
Perfect. I'll take a
look. Talk about the effort that you guys put out there in the second half, because I asked you about the Carolina game where it was sort of flipped. You guys had all the defensive effort in the first half, and it kind of waned in this game. The second half was so much more focus from you guys. What's happening there?
It was grit and togetherness. In the second half of the Carolina game and the first half of this game, we got away from being who we are and doing what we do. And the second half of today's game, we got right back to it, and that's why we were able to come back.
And for this team to have won an ACC title without two of your most important defensive players, and to put on the kind of defensive show that you guys did, is it extra effort, or is this always been there?
It's always been there for sure. The extra effort and sense of urgency, knowing we got to pick our guys up. But it's really just knowing that we got 15 guys who can really play and who can guard and who are bought into winning. And so that, of course, we're a better team with Coop and Malik. We want them back as soon as possible. But this gave us the opportunity for other guys to step up, and they stepped up big.
Now, you were one of the first guys that got up on the ladder to cut down the nets. What was that like? Is this new? I mean,
it was awesome. Just looking around, like I've been at the Final Four the last few years, watched a lot of games. I've seen a lot of nets get cut down, and I'm just thinking, just stay the course. So it's a long time coming for me, and we still got, if we handle business, 3 more weekends, another opportunity.
There you go. I saw when after John got done cutting it down, he said one more.
Yeah, we got one more. We've won the first 2 championships. We keep handling business, and we got one more on the line.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Appreciate it, Jason.
Donald, if you did not love listening to Mason Gillis talk about desperation in the details.
That was my favorite part.
Yeah. What it takes to win at this level. I guarantee you, Mason Gillis is telling those guys, A, about making the national championship game last year and coming up just that little bit short, and B, the season before where Purdue got knocked out in the first round as one of the 2 1 seeds to lose to a 16. Mason Gillis has all the experience you could possibly want in in postseason success and disaster to be able to convey to this team, what it takes to get things done. I also loved Sion talking about, how the second half of the UNC game, first half of the Louisville game was not who Duke is, and that we recognized, we need to get back to being who we are. And boy, when we talk about the game, we're going to talk about the second half of the Louisville game and the Duke defense. And then again, I really enjoyed Patrick talking about his battle to man in practice. Some of the stuff that you heard from John Shire, you then heard Pat tell me in the post game. It was great fun.
I think the sound with Mason Gillis talking about his experience and you said the desperation is in the details. That I was like, man, that's a bar and a half. That's some sound stuff. And again, it's more about what he brings as far as experience, but also the fact that even as a new player, right, to this team, to this school, to this university, to this program, to the Brotherhood, those guys turned to him and said, "What's it like?" Right? Like they for him to get to that point where very quickly he is an elder statesman where they go to him for wisdom and not the other way around. That requires a lot of trust on everyone's part, and it also requires a lot of chemistry. In the summer, last fall, last summer, what did we hear about this team? When all those secret practices were happening and we were getting some intel, everyone around the program said, this team is together in a way that other teams have not been in the last 20 years. And they continue to say that. And I think that is the reason why this mixture of youth and experience have all come together. And as you mentioned, and as John mentioned, they are all learning from each other. And that's how teams, in Kaizen words, get better every single day.
I love it. Hey, let's get to the headlines, man. There were some good ones.
We had a ton. Everyone was celebrating this one. Jason, I'm going to start with Matthew Green because Matthew Green also shouts out the women in this one. He goes, nothing easy. Duke men and women ACC accomplish greatness, which I think was great. We're taking in the ACC theme of the tournaments.
Herschel Patel gave us Duke holds all the cards in dominant second half victory.
Oh, yeah. I had a similar one from Courtney Kruger, who said, even without a pair of aces, Duke has the cards to win the ACC championship.
Abby Reeves, 2 down, 1 to go. Duke downs the cards with dazzling display of guts and grit. I think that sums up the game. The guts and the grit for sure.
Yeah. Dave Jordan, along that line, he just wrote, toughness is what champions are made of, which I thought was brilliant.
Jared Strauss, victory! Duke evicts the Ville with vengeful defense. I like that one.
John Grantland, of course, always writes in, and he had a bunch of them, but this is my favorite one. He goes, ACC champs. Louisville strikes out as Duke shows they are the real sluggers of the ACC.
All right, the last one I loved. Jason Simpson. This is simple. Guts. All guts. That's all he wrote. Man,
yeah,
that is
it was
perfect.
Great. I was actually going to end with that one, but the last one that I have is from Braden Watson, who a lot of puns when it comes to the Cardinals, Cards, Louisville, and he wrote, Louisville's biggest test of the season was proctored. Devils down cards for ACC championship.
I like that one too. Good stuff, folks. Keep it
Great
coming.
job. DBRpodcast@gmail.com. Of course, we're going to be talking a lot of, you're going to hear from us a lot this week because we got the selection show tonight. We got preparing for game 1 of the NCAA tournament. So email us, dbrpodcast@gmail.com. Thank you to everyone who submitted headlines. Jason, let's get to the good in this game. There's a lot in this game, but I first of all, I just want to talk about this. Some people mentioned it, the guts, the grinding this game out. And I mentioned Dave Jordan when he noted the similarities between the first time we played Louisville, the very first ACC game of the season, and the last game. And I think when we talk, and we'll do some predictions later, but all I know is this: the selection committee might give Auburn the number 1 overall seed after seeing what has happened this week. They might not. But if they give Auburn the number 1 overall seed, all I know is that they have to have the serious discussion in that room about this team and how they're able to achieve an ACC title without 2 of their top 6 stars, including the guy that everyone presumes to be the number 1 pick in the upcoming NBA draft. The tenacity that they showed coming out of the locker room to start the second half. Again, it wasn't a big deficit, but it was enough to make everybody think, hey, is this the time? Is this the team that could pick this Duke team off? Yeah, they may not have Cooper Flag, but hey, a lot, like we said, no one is going to look back and go, oh yeah, Duke lost that ACC title game, but they were without 2 guys. They're going to say Louisville won the ACC championship. These guys came out with the tenacity and the grit to press forward. And when they took the lead, we had that patented Duke run. It wasn't necessarily a blitzkrieg of points. It was a slow, steady buildup. But when we took the lead, we saw the opportunity to go take the ACC championship. It was not given to us. It wasn't laid on the stage for us to grab it. We had to go take it at that moment. And I think that is what this team did, is they went out and they took what was theirs, and they did so by great defense and executing on offense.
I want to remind everyone, if you didn't get a chance, and it's possible, look, we've been firing episodes at you left and right very quickly.
We did episode 700 like 7 days ago.
Yeah, I know. If you did not get a chance to listen to our preview of the Louisville game, I noted that since December 15th, when Louisville lost to Kentucky to go to 6-5, since mid-December, Louisville has played like the number 11 team in the land. They were 21-1 over their past 22 games coming into this game against Duke. Sit in that for a moment. The number 11 team in all of college basketball in terms of the advanced metrics. And Duke subtracted the best player in the country, subtracted perhaps the best defender in the country, and went ahead and beat them anyway, comfortably, by 11 points, dominating the second half, strangling the Louisville offense in the second half. It is worth noting, Louisville scored only 24 total points in the second half. It was their worst second half scoring output of the season. They played 30 games. They haven't played a game where they played a team that held them down the way this Duke team, minus Cooper Flag, minus Malik Brown, the way we did it to them in the second half. Are you kidding me? How can the NCAA Tournament Committee, Selection Committee, possibly look at this and say, oh, Auburn's lost 3 out of 4. They're still better than this Duke team? On what planet does that make sense?
Who beat them?
Who beat them? Who beat them? On what planet does that make sense? It's insane to think about, but I bet they're going to do it. But anyway, I don't want to get into that. I want to get into what Duke did in that second half. Louisville hit 25% of their shots from the field. They only hit a quarter of their shots. It wasn't because we were giving them open shots. They were missing them. It's because they could not get open. They could not get an easy shot. They only hit 14%, 2 out of 14% from 3 in the second half. This is a Louisville team that averages 79 points per game, and they scored 62 against Duke. And after racing out and getting, Duke on their heels in the first half with fast breaks, they were taking off. Like every missed shot, every turnover, Louisville was out running. That's what Louisville does. They only got 2 fast break points on Duke in the second half. Duke blocked 5 shots in the second half. We sent Louisville to the free throw line only 10 times in this game. We just made it so hard for them to get points all the time. And Terrence Edwards Jr., who had a hell of a game. I mean, played, and again, on the preview, we said, that guy always plays well against us. Yeah. Mm-hmm. In the first 25 minutes of this game, the first half plus the first 5 minutes of the second half, he had 22 points. He capped it off by hitting an impossible shot with the shot clock about to expire and Sion James in his grill. And it's just like you tip your cap and you just go. At that point, he had 22 points in 25 minutes. For the final 15 minutes of this game, he only scored 7 points. And by the way, 2 of them were a meaningless layup with 15 seconds left. Basically, during the final 15 minutes when the game was decided, the guy who had led them, the guy who was scoring all the points for them, was unable to do much of anything. And a lot of that credit should go to Mason Gillis. Mason was just in that dude's shorts. I mean, it was impressive to watch, because I'm going to tell you, when we get to the bad, I'm going to talk about Mason Gillis's first half.
Talk about a lot of people there if you want, yeah.
But his second half, he was outstanding. He played 16 minutes, I think it was, in the second half, and we just wore them down. Louisville's a really physical team. They don't mind contact, and yet Duke was able to completely wear them down and just make life miserable for them in the second half. And I think part of it was, Chucky Hepburn and Terrence Edwards played 40 minutes in this game. Javon Hadley played 38. And I noted in the preview that those guys had played like virtually every minute in Louisville's first 2 games. I think 3 games in 3 days for guys playing 38, 39, 40 minutes a game. That was just a lot for them. And especially like Hadley, who had a great game against Clemson. He scored 20 points against Clemson. He only got 6 points in this game. Duke was able to wear down the guys that Louisville was counting on. And as a result, Louisville couldn't do anything in the second half.
Terrence Edwards had 29 points, but he also shot 29 shots to do that. So the efficiency, again, of the defense, especially in the second half when they just clamped down, because over the last 8 minutes of the game, they were just giving, if Chucky Hepburn didn't have the ball, they were basically giving the ball to Terrence Edwards and trying to see if he can shoot his way back, shoot Louisville back into the game. And they just couldn't get any good shots off. And in the first half, even, he was hitting some tough ones. You mentioned the couple of end of shot clock type of shots that he made, which were kind of falling back or with a guy in their face. It was. I mean, again, they played tough. It's credit to them. But I think our defense continued to weather the storm. And at a certain point, they just said, we're not going to do a bend, don't break strategy. We're just going to sit here and just be the wall. And you guys run into the wall as many times as you want. We're not falling down. And I think that was the key here. I think the first player, I want to switch to the players. In the big men, once again, that 5 spot, right? Man, and Big Pat. They were incredible. On offense and defense. There was a point, Jason, in the second half where, again, I was kind of listening to the in between going to the soccer game and then also going to my friend's house to watch the game. And there was a point where I just didn't know who was in the game because that spot was just so fluid. And they're like, "Oh, blocked by," and you're like, "Which one? Big Pat? Man, who did it? Doesn't matter." I thought their defense was really good, and I think also there was points where the rebounding was there. They had to be there because it salvaged a couple of possessions. And you mentioned the fact that they're learning from each other. They have different qualities, as we've talked about all year long.
Yeah, big time. Yeah.
They have different qualities, but somehow, again, when you merge that into one position, and even when you throw in Malik Brown into this bunch, they have become one almost unstoppable unit. When you combine their stats, you're like, man, nobody can contend with that if it was one player. But now you got 2 with different qualities who can, just by subbing those guys in for each other, you can throw different defensive looks at this team. One guy has the reach, one guy has the touch, right? They're like Pat with the ball in his hand has become kind of a sight to see. And I think between the 2 of them, the way they play off of each other, coming into the game for each other, and even those very rare times, right? The very rare times we've seen this season where both of them were in the game, those guys have a knack for knowing how to keep the spacing available for everybody on the floor. And the way that they're able to improve their passing and all that stuff, it has been great. And it really, they may not be the player of the week. They may not be the player of this tournament, but we do not stand on that stage without those 2 guys.
Donald, you mentioned the stats that Big Pat and Man put up together. 15 points, 12 rebounds, 5 blocked shots, 6 offensive rebounds, and Man was just constantly tapping the ball back, trying to give us a chance for another offensive rebound. The thing that shocked me the most was the way Big Pat turned into an offensive weapon, and also brought great defensive energy. There were a couple times he got a little bit lost on after he'd have 3 or 4 really successful possessions in a row. I think he would get a little bit like a puppy dog. He'd get a little excited, and you'd see him double teaming and stuff like that off a screen. And I'd go, oh, your man is now underneath the basket all by himself, Pat.
Yeah, there was a couple of those. And it wasn't like a defensive lapse. It was more of a, I guess, over eagerness to, oh, we got him in the corner. And then they're like, oh, why's the ball behind? Oh, that was me.
Yeah, right, exactly. It's okay. He's learning. He's getting there. But for overall, his defense was terribly impressive in this game. It is worth noting that Big Pat plays 13 minutes. His plus minus was plus 15 in those 13 minutes. He tied Sion James for the best plus minus on the team. And I wanted to mention, there was a moment in the second half where on consecutive possessions, Duke isolated Pat in the post or at the foul line and fed him the ball, and everybody cleared out and just let him go. And I was like, if you have Duke feeding Patrick Gongba to go one-on-one in the final minutes of a tight ACC final, if you got that on your bingo card, you win. Bingo, baby. Because I did not see that coming.
Yeah, but the best part about it was, and I think we're talking about the same play. I don't know if it's my play of the game, but he caught it on the wing, or I guess it was close to the corner, and there was just one guy between him and the basket. He did like a slow move, and for some reason the Louisville player bid on it, and all of a sudden it was just him driving to the lane. You see, if someone must have a still image of this, because there's a point where he did kind of like a spin move and the Louisville player is on his way to the ground. And you could just see him looking up at Big Pat as Big Pat kind of lays it in. And I stood out of my seat and was like, yo, if Big Pat's doing this, Louisville just needs to pack it in, because that guy looked up and just said, is that a bird? Is that a guard? No, that's Big Pat. That's what that play was like.
I love it. Hey, as we move on with the players, I really want to talk about Tyrese Proctor, who John Shire said, killer. In the postgame, Shire was like, Proctor, killer. It is, and Shire, by the way, makes the second team all-tournament team. It is worth noting that John Shire was 0 of 10 on three-pointers coming into this game. And
Tyrese, not Shire.
I'm sorry.
Shire cannot shoot the basketball legally in college anymore. He is the coach.
I apologize. I'm talking about Tyrese Proctor. It's that I'm thinking about what John Shire was saying about him in the calling him a killer. It's my bad. Tyrese Proctor.
John could probably still shoot it though.
If he had eligibility. Yeah. Oh, in preseason, in pregame warmups. Yes.
Yeah.
Shire gets out there sometimes. In any event, Tyrese Proctor, 0 of 10 on three-pointers coming into this game. And he had to be thinking a little bit in the back of his head about his postseason last year, because he struggled in the ACC tournament against NC State. He wasn't exactly great in the NCAA tournament. And then when we played NC State in the final, in the Elite Eight, Proctor went 0 for 9, didn't score a single point, nightmare of a game, probably his worst game in a Duke uniform. And, with him struggling to hit threes, he had to be thinking about that a little bit. And yet he goes out in this game and hits a career-high 6 3-pointers. Now, I know he took he took 14 threes. But by the way, 6 for 14, I'll take that from 3 all day long, on his way to scoring 19 points. And after the game, I wanted to note, as soon as John Shire cut down the net, he's the last guy who goes up on that ladder and cuts it down. As soon as he cut down the net, he walked directly up to Tyrese Proctor and he put the net over Tyrese Proctor's head. And that Proctor was then walking around wearing the net everywhere he went. They have a special relationship, Tyrese Proctor and John Shire do. And Shire knows that Proctor needed and wanted a game like this where he would just rain threes all day long.
He also, in the post-game interview on ESPN, he mentioned Jay Lucas, right? And Jay Lucas obviously had just left for Miami, and he mentioned the special bond that they had and how initially he was like, in the initial days it was kind of difficult turning and knowing that he wasn't there. to get the advice that he was normally getting for him, and he had to kind of go through that. And I think we even, when you talk about his shooting woes, we can even talk about the basketball, right? That's been kind of going around, the type of basketball that the ACC was using compared to what will be used in the NCAA tournament, compared to what we use all year on the college level.
The players were apparently complaining, not to me, but apparently the players were complaining that it just felt weird in their hands. I think it was a Spalding ball rather than a Wilson.
Yeah, Zino even had the record, or I guess the shooting percentages on Twitter of each basketball that we used this season, from the Nike to Adidas when we were on the road at Adidas schools. Spalding is the ACC ball. The Wilson ball is the NCAA tournament ball. So for me, I'm like, if I'm the ACC, I'm using the Wilson ball so that people can get used to it before the NCAA tournament. But I digress. But I think also, again, there's something to be said about the fact that these guys didn't shoot well the first 2 days, and it might be because there really is no time for shoot-arounds in those arenas when you have a tournament going on, right? They're not getting out there at 4 a.m. to do a shoot-around before everyone else can get out there to warm up for their games. And those games are going from noon to almost midnight, or just after midnight sometimes. So there's not an opportunity until you get to walk out onto that floor for the game to actually shoot on those rims. And that took a couple days for them to adjust. But hey, I'm glad they were able to adjust for the ACC final, because I think Tyrese Proctor, his threes were not just killer, they were opportune, right? There was definitely times where we needed that three to kind of stay with Louisville, to stem any momentum that they may have, or to create momentum of our own. And I'm so glad that if someone's going to go off in this final, I'm super proud that it was him, right? He's gone through a lot. He's had the injuries. He's come back, and he's seen his draft stock fluctuate throughout his career. He came here early to be a part of this, and now he's getting a chance to be a part of another ACC championship, a regular season title, and hopefully this is not the last net that is going to be draped around his neck.
Hey, as we wrap up the good, and by the way, just so folks know, I'll be talking about Kon Knueppel when we get to Player of the Week.
Sure.
But as we wrap
ACC
up
Tournament
the good,
MVP, that guy? Yeah, sure.
Yeah, exactly. As we wrap up the good, I've got a couple questions. I'm wondering, who was the ACC Defensive Player of the Year guarding? The guy who won Defensive Player of the Year over Cooper Flagg. Who was he guarding? Because it wasn't Kon Knueppel, who had 18 points on 12 shots. Also had 8 rebounds and 3 assists. He wasn't guarding Tyrese Proctor, who had 19 points and was raining threes all day. He wasn't guarding Sion James, who had 15 points on 7 shots. Who was the ACC Player of the Year guarding? I couldn't tell, Donald, what Chucky Hepburn was doing to make him ACC Defensive Player of the Year. I guess I must have just missed it. Oh, and by the way, who won ACC Coach of the Year? I'm trying to remember, because there was a dude out there who won the regular season title and then ran through the ACC tourney, won the tourney title, even though he was missing his best player and the best 6th man in the league. I forget who won ACC Coach of the Year. It's just, I couldn't tell watching this game who the better coach was. Could you?
I mean, I know one team had 22 wins in the ACC this year and just 1 loss. It wasn't Louisville. So we'll leave it at that. I mean, also, you mentioned the steals, and Chucky Hepburn, make no mistake, he's a great player. But he only had 1 steal yesterday. Again, I think what we were able to do is take him effectively out of the game on defense, especially in the second half.
Yeah.
The frustration that he showed, I don't know if you could see it, but the frustration when they show him on TV and they do a close-up of him, he had this look on his face as if to say, what else am I supposed to do? And when you got players that are questioning themselves in that moment, you've already won the title. Hey, let's take a quick break. On the other side, we'll talk about some of the things that went wrong in this game, and then we're going to do some Player of the Week, Play of the Game, and some NCAA Tournament predictions, because this Selection Sunday, we got to do that. So we'll do it after this. Who's scoring big in the NBA this season? You are. With all the new ways to get in on the last month of action at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NBA.
Boy, that's right, Duke fans. From Zion Williamson rocking the rim to Jason Tatum draining threes, or Tyus and Trey Jones dishing out those assists. Get behind your favorite players and the prop bets you can make on DraftKings to keep things entertaining.
So take it to the rack with DraftKings Sportsbook. Every point counts. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app and use code DukeBB. Yes, that's code DukeBB for new customers to get $150 in bonus bets when you bet just $5. Only on DraftKings. The crown is yours.
Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. In Connecticut, help is available for problem gambling. Call 888-789-7777 or visit ccpg.org. Please play responsibly. On behalf of Boot Hill Casino and Resort in Kansas, 21 and over, age and eligibility varies by jurisdiction. Void in Ontario. Bonus bets expire 168 hours after issuance. For additional terms and responsible gaming resources, see dkng.co/audio.
Watch the world's biggest tennis stars clash in the California desert at the BNP Paribas Open, live on Tennis Channel.
How do they get to these shots?
Tune in daily for exclusive first ball to last coverage from Indian Wells and witness all of the jaw-dropping action as the game's top men and women square off at one of the greatest events in sports. It's tennis magic you need to see to believe. The BNP Paribas Open, live on Tennis Channel and streaming on the Tennis Channel app.
Empower. Claire is practicing her breathing for her upcoming yoga retreat in Bali. Has she ever done yoga before? No. But Claire worked with Empower on her savings and investment strategy. She got good at money, so she can be a little bad. Empower. Invest well, live a little. Join our 19 million customers today at empower.com.
Past performance is not indicative of future returns. Investing involves risks. You may lose money. Advisory services are provided for a fee by Empower Advisor Group, LLC, EAG, a registered investment advisor with the Securities and Exchange Commission. Om Namaste.
This episode is brought to you by Shopify. Forget the frustration of picking commerce platforms when you switch your business to Shopify, the global commerce platform that supercharges your selling wherever you sell. With Shopify, you'll harness the same intuitive features, trusted apps, and powerful analytics used by the world's leading brands. Sign up today for your $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/tech, all lowercase. That's shopify.com/tech.
Halliday presents, in the red corner, the undisputed, undefeated Weed Whacker Guy. Champion of hurling grass and pollen everywhere. And in the blue corner, the challenger, extra strength Halliday. Eye drops that work all day to prevent the release of histamines that cause itchy allergy eyes. And the winner by knockout is Halliday. Halliday, bring it on.
All right, Jason, we are back, and let's turn to some of the things that we can improve from this game. And it's funny, I want to lead with this. I mentioned how tough we played in the second half, but I just want to give credit to Louisville because they played tough the entire game. They really were able to frustrate us in the first half, and it took, kind of like some of the other games in this tournament, it took us a few minutes to try and figure out what they were doing to get some of the shots that they were doing. And make no mistake, they hit some tough shots, but I think they were able to build a slight lead because of the fact that they were just in our grill, and it was quite frustrating in the first half for us to, not do, kind of do what we're doing and know that they were kind of meeting us at every single corner. Some of those passing lanes were a little bit tight. Some of those, shooting angles were a little bit closed out. And I think, credit to Louisville, but it just, for us, we didn't really enter this game understanding fully what Louisville was going to bring to the table. And it'd been a while, right? It'd been 2.5 months that we'd seen them. But at the same time, this was a team that came out ready to play. And that was the first half for me, is a lot of frustration on offense. And then even on defense, them hitting some of those tough shots really, stymied our momentum.
I'm so glad you started by giving credit to Louisville. That's what was my first thing in the bat. I said full credit to Louisville. They played really hard. They made us work. They made us really work on offense. It was just nothing easy. Duke has 11 assists in this game on 22 made baskets. That's fine, 50% assist rate. But this is a Duke team that strives to be a little bit higher than that, and usually is a little bit higher. 60
to 65 is what we're normally used to.
Yeah, and that was because Louisville was forcing us to go one-on-one. I noticed, like, our passing game, we weren't able to make long passes as much as usual. A lot of what we were doing was just doing, big man handoffs up top, and then hoping on that handoff you could create a little bit of separation from one of our guards. But Louisville never made anything easy for us the entire game. A tough, physical team. My friend Kobe Dolan texted midway through the first half, and he said, I wonder if the refs, we need the refs to call more than 5 out of every 15 fouls on Louisville.
Right.
He said this is a rugby match, and he was absolutely right about that. But part of that is full credit to Louisville for playing super, super hard all the whole time. Duke earned this victory, and we should praise Louisville for playing the way they did.
Can I just say as an aside, that Louisville team last night, the Louisville team that we've seen this year under Pat Kelsey, that is the Louisville that college basketball needs, right? Having Louisville back in this conversation of being one of the better teams in the ACC, and then being one of the elite programs in college basketball. The last couple of years was not Louisville, so I'm glad in a way. I can say that now that we won. I'm very glad that Louisville, it appears to be on the rise again, and I think that's good for the ACC especially. Jason, I think the other thing was on the boards. The one place where I thought we were struggling was on defensive rebounding. Louisville had 16 offensive rebounds. It led to them, one of your favorite stats, it led to them taking 14 more shots than us. Normally in an ACC tournament final, that is going to cost you the game. And I'm not saying it's a huge concern that has built itself and something that has become a trend, but it's obviously something that against a good team in the NCAA tournament now, we're going to be playing a lot of good teams. We want to be able to win that rebounding battle and keep them off the offensive glass because, you do not want your opponent shooting 14 more shots than you.
Yeah, and full credit to Louisville for fighting for those rebounds. That rebound margin, we ended up losing at 38-35, but it was worse early on. There was a moment like 10 or 12 minutes in this game where Louisville was out rebounding Duke by like 7 or 8. And one of the things I wanted to note connected to that was I thought in the first half especially, we needed help from Mason Gillis. We needed him to get more. We needed him to at least get rebounds for this team. And I thought both Mason and Caleb Foster, they had some moments in the first half, but for the most part, their first halves were not good. They played 16 minutes combined in the first half, Mason and Caleb. 16 minutes. They had 0 points, 2 rebounds, and 3 turnovers. Caleb Foster played 9 minutes for Duke in the first half, and Duke was -8 in those 9 minutes. Caleb did have a really nice, chase down rebound that he fired to Tyrese for a 3-pointer. But, he and Mason didn't do a lot else in the first half, and I was really, really worried about that. Now, Mason came back and was huge in the second half, and I spoke about that earlier. But it's concerning, at a time when Duke's bench has been really thinned because of the injuries to Cooper Flagg and Malik Brown. You need other guys to step up a bit more maybe than they did. And in that same vein, I sort of expected Isaiah Evans to have a big game here. He had 2 3-pointers, but he plays 18 minutes and doesn't do very much else other than hit those 2 3-pointers. I'm very confident we're going to get Cooper back and that some of these guys are going to see their roles adjusted again. But if we're being honest in the bad, I have a tough time saying that the first half we got from Mason Gillis and the game we got from Caleb Foster and Isaiah Evans, I have trouble putting those any place but the bad.
I mean, we only had 3 guys, hit 3-pointers in this game. We took 27 of them. We hit 10, but 6 of them came from Tyrese Proctor. So I thought the shooting in the first half especially was a little bit down, but also on defense, we were letting Louisville beat us in 2 ways. On the break off of turnovers and in the paint. They outscored us in both those categories in the first half. We were able to stifle that in the second half, and I think that's what led to us coming back. But again, the good teams are going to get out on the break, especially if you give them the ball. The turnovers were a little loose in the first half. I think we clamped down a little bit. We ended up with 11. So, Jason, we were just under that threshold that you set, right? Thanks for that. Thanks for that threshold. But again, we obviously, after a few weeks of seeing us in the single digits, having a couple of games in this ACC tournament where we had double-digit turnovers, that's an easy thing that we can figure out. Take care of the basketball, and some of these points that Louisville get doesn't really happen. Anything else in the bad category?
Tyrese Proctor at the free throw line, 1 of 5.
Yeah. He hit the last
Reese.
one. Last one.
Reese, babe, you got to work on that. you give me heart palpitations, and it's worth noting, against Carolina, he misses the front end of a 1-and-1. You were just like
late, yeah,
late, when we really needed it. So the 1 of 5 at the free throw line, but he was great from the 3-pointer range. So we'll put it aside. It's been mentioned and forgotten.
Hey, we just need to tell you, like, hey, this is what you did wrong. We're not telling you anything you didn't already know, and we hope that that's back for the NCAA tournament. Jason, let's get to the play of the game. Jason, honestly, there's a few plays here that we could do, but what is your play of the game?
So with about 12:45 left in the game, Big Pat just has a outrageous block. Just one of these just spike, unbelievable blocks. Now, it's worth noting Louisville gets the ball back, and we then forced Edwards into a really tough shot that he missed it. When he misses it, Mason Gillis gets one of his man rebounds. And by man, I mean, like, in the second half, Mason Gillis was a man. He was an adult playing in the lane, getting rebounds. And Duke went the other way, and Tyrese Proctor ended up feeding the ball to Sion James on the wing for a huge three-pointer. So that sequence of Pat's block, forcing Edwards into a tough shot, Gillis getting a big rebound, and then Proctor hitting Sion for the three. That gave us, it was a 2-point lead for Duke. That gave us a 5-point lead. And it was the first time in the entire second half that we had a little bit of breathing room, and it just grew from there. And that moment, by the way, the crowd, after the block and then the three, the crowd was just on fire. And I took a note. I was like, this is the play of the game.
I think that was the one I had at the top, because, as you mentioned, I think if I remember correctly, it took us to 52-47. And I really, at that point, again, we were up. It was kind of going back and forth. We're up 2, they're up 2. But then we went up 5, and that was when we kind of saw hey, there's blood. There's blood in the water. Let's go get it. Right. Let's go eat. And I think that's where that patented Duke run really turned out. All right, Jason, we go to player of the week. The ACC gave the tournament MVP to Kon Knueppel. And I think, as you mentioned in the front half, is that going to be your player of the week?
Yes. In fact, as a member of the media sitting on press row, midway through the second half, I was sent an email to say, you need to vote on the all-tournament team and the tournament MVP. And I was like, oh, snap, I get to vote. Now, I'm going to be clear. I did not vote for 5 Dukies or 7 Dukies on my altar. I tried to, we take this stuff seriously. And in fact, my all-tournament team matched my first team. The 5 guys I picked for my first team for the all-tournament team exactly matched the 5 guys who ended up being the ACC all-tournament team, which is Kon Knueppel, Kamen Malowacz, Chucky Hepburn, Terrence Edwards, and Andrei Stojakovic of
Cal. Yeah.
Of Cal,
he had a great tournament.
We didn't get to see him, but in his first 2 games, he was just absolutely ridiculous.
Mm-hmm.
So that was my all-tournament team, and that's who the first team all-tournament team was. My second team was a little different, but I had Tyrese Proctor and Sion James on my second team, and Tyrese Proctor makes second team. But my player of the week and the player I picked for the tournament MVP was Kon Knueppel. He scored 53 points. He was 22 of 24 at the free throw line. He had 14 assists, 17 rebounds. Remember, this is in 3 games. So he was 1 assist away from averaging a 10-5-5. Or I guess you could say a 15-5-5, almost like a 19-5-5, basically.
Yeah.
For the week. Actually, wait, I'm doing my math wrong. He averaged over 20 points a game on the week. I mean, just Kon was outrageous, but I wanted to shout out, because I'm sure everyone's going to pick Kon as their player of the week. Man had, in 3 games, 35 points, 28 rebounds, and 8 blocks. What are we even talking about? Yeah,
that's incredible.
Yeah, so I'm sorry, Kamen Malowacz. Kon Knueppel was just too good, but I mean, 35, 28, and 8 from a big man in 3 straight games. Yes, please. Can I have another?
So I also went with Kon as my player of the week, but my unsung hero is the 5 spot. The combination of Man and Big Pat. We do not win this tournament without them.
Yes.
So yeah. I'm happy for that. Okay, Jason, before we close out again, it's Selection Sunday. We have the selection show in about 7 hours for the men. And so I wanted to give your quick prediction on what's going to happen with a few ACC teams. Of course, really, we're only talking about 4: Duke, Clemson, Louisville, and UNC. Duke, of course, we are going to get a 1 seed. It's a question of whether we're the number 1 overall seed. So I ask you, do you think Duke gets the number 1 overall seed in the the NCAA tournament?
I think probably not, because the selection committee over in recent years has shown you again and again and again that they're putting very little weight on the conference tournaments. And as a result, Duke winning without Cooper Flagg and without Malik Brown, which is a true testament to the depth of this team, they're just not, it doesn't carry much value to them. I don't know why. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, they're basically evaluating these teams on 30 games. And if you win a conference tournament, 10% of your schedule, the most recent 10% of your schedule is sitting right there for them to look at it. But I guess they're so busy working on getting the bracket put in place. I think they sort of want to lock down, especially those high seeds early on, and then not worry about the conference tournaments. I think that's foolish. It doesn't make any sense. And I also think there's a million arguments for why Duke deserves the overall number 1 ahead of Auburn. But I'm not sure it changes all that much, because Duke was going to get, I think Duke is going to get the worst of the 4 good SEC teams as our number 2. That's just how it feels to me like it's going to work out. I don't know whether that's going to be Alabama or Tennessee. I think Auburn and Florida are probably both going to get number 1 seeds. But in fact, I think it's probably going to be Alabama. If I'm sort of looking.
I was going to say it's Alabama. I'm sorry, it's Florida and Tennessee in the SEC final. I think the winner of that gets the 1.
I guess probably they might do that way. It's also possible because that game's happening so close to selection time that they may just completely ignore it. Like I said, the committee looks like they just don't care.
They usually have 2 brackets for that particular purpose. The Big Ten, remember, would always end at like 5:59, and then the select show would be at 6. They go, yeah, we had 2 brackets depending on who won. So I agree with you. I don't think we get the 1 seed. But again, like I said, they're going to have to
overall number 1.
Overall number 1, yeah,
very clear. Yes, Duke's getting Duke's going to be at worst the number 2 overall seed.
Correct. I think they should have the number 1 overall seed, but I also think that we did enough this week where they're going to have to explain that on national TV why they're giving Auburn the number 1 overall seed, despite the fact that they've lost 3 of 4. They did not win their conference tournament, and the team that they're compared with beat them earlier in the year. So our resume is there. If they want to put 87 teams in the SEC in there and say that's the reason why, again, they have to explain that, not us. We know who, in our mind, who the number 1 overall seed should be. Okay, the seed for Clemson. Where do you think Clemson? You don't have to do regions because those are whatever.
Yeah.
What seed number do you think Clemson gets?
I think Clemson's probably coming in around a 5. And I actually think Louisville will also be a 5. Louisville may be a 6. Clemson's a little ahead of Louisville in a lot of the metrics and the such. But yeah, my gut is that both those teams are right around a 5. And I'll go ahead and say, if I'm a number 1, if I'm a number 4 who's looking at at Louisville or Clemson as a 5, I'm not happy. I think that they look pretty strong. These are teams that feel to me like they're playing better than their seed may indicate.
I have Clemson at a 5, and I have Louisville at a 6. I think most prognosticators, like the bracket matrix, kind of averaged out Louisville to being a 7 before this tournament. And I think with the tournament run to the final and how they played to get there, and again, whether they carry weight of being up on Duke at the half, once again, I think they move up to a 6, the 6 line. But again, I'm with you. I think if you're a team that's facing them and see them in your pod, you're like, yo, this is not what we signed up for. Finally, Jason, the last one, because unfortunately we don't have a lot of teams in the ACC to talk about. The last team to talk about is UNC. Of course, they have been on the bubble for the last 3 or 4 weeks. Do you think UNC gets into the NCAA tournament, whether it's the play-in first 4 game or outright into the bracket?
No, I think that they've missed the bracket. I think the fact that I think, what was their final record, 1-11?
1-12.
1-12 in quad 1 games. They had chances. They had chances to show that they can beat teams that are going to be in the NCAA tournament field. And they failed to do that again and again and again and again. And to me, the ultimate indictment is, they played a Duke team that was missing two of its best players, and they couldn't get it done in a game they had to have. So I think Carolina's, and there have been a couple upsets, like I think it's the Mountain West had an upset just last night, where Boise State lost to Colorado State. So that makes the bubble just a little bit smaller, and I think that's going to be Carolina's death knell. I don't know if they're going to take an NIT bid, but I don't think they're going to get an NCAA bid.
I think basically the last few days it's been down to, a lot of people think it's down to UNC and Texas, which goes back to my conversation about the SEC. All week long, the SEC has been on ESPN. ESPN has been hyping the fact that they're getting the most bids in NCAA tournament history of any conference, and the number that they've been looking at is 14. Texas is that 14th team. UNC has a stronger record, but as you mentioned, they're 1-12 against quad one teams. Texas, compared to UNC, has the weaker schedule, at least non-conference, but they have more quad one wins. I think they go with the SEC. I think they go with Texas, and they leave UNC, once again, having to answer the question, do we want to play in the NIT? But again, as you mentioned, UNC has no one to blame but itself, and it also might be a little bit funny that a lane violation is what cost them a chance at the NCAA tournament. Jason, we're going to leave it there on this episode. But before we get on, I think you have one quick note.
I wanted to mention in the post game from the ACC title, everyone on Duke was really clear about one thing, that there is more to be done. Kon Knueppel said 2 down, 1 to go. Sion James said to me, we've got 3 more weeks of this left. John Shire cut down the net, looked at the crowd, and said one more net to be cut. These guys are laser focused on a goal that will only be found in San Antonio on April 7th. And there is no hesitation from any of them when you ask them, how great is this ACC tournament win? They're like, it's great. We've got more to be done. That is the kind of attitude that you get from a champion that understands there is still more to come.
Yeah, hopefully there are 2 nets to be cutting that they're going to be cutting down.
No. They're not going to cut down. If this team wins the regional to make the final,
they're not going to cut it down.
They're not going to cut down those nets.
That's fine.
That's the sense I got. And in recent years, that teams have done that less and less. Teams don't do that very much anymore because they recognize that this isn't a championship that we've won. The championship is still to come. They don't want, don't celebrate reaching the Final Four, celebrate winning the Final Four. I think that if Duke wins their regional, you will not see them cut down nets.
It's possible. And again, but I know in 2022 we did. And it's kind of like in hockey, right? A lot of people, when they win the conference, they have the trophy and no one wants to touch it because they're going for the Stanley Cup. We're obviously going for that one that you mentioned that will be in San Antonio. San Antonio, you and I have unfinished business, and I hope to settle said business on April 7th. But we will be back later today to preview everything about the NCAA tournament brackets. The men's show is on CBS at 6 p.m. Eastern time. The women's selection show, of course, Duke women are going to be a high seed in that tournament. That is at 8 p.m. on ESPN. Tune in for both shows. We're going to be back later to discuss everything. We're going to get to the men. If our schedule's aligned, we will hopefully get the women in, but if not, we will absolutely do it on the next episode after that. But until then, he's Jason. He's going to get on the road and go home safely. I'm Donald Wine. It's now time for the Duke Band to play us out. Take us to the NCAA tournament, baby.